Ikuto was an ugly bum who ran away from home and boarded a ship hoping to start a new life. However, this only led to him getting shipwrecked and end up on an island full of thirsty girls who compete for his sausage. It all begins when Suzu, an islander, goes fishing but ends up catching our deadbeat Ikuto. Confused, she hits his factory reset button too many times and freaks out when she realizes she's just made it worse. Desperate, Suzu suddenly grabs him and locks lips with him for CPR, making Ikuto think he must have made it into heaven somehow. But when Suzu overdoses it again, she decides to drag him back to her grandma for help. Later, a crowd of ladies gathers to watch Suzu's grandma scold her for almost ending Ikuto's life with her bad breath. However, when Suzu asks her why Ikuto's chest is flat like her backside, Grandma reveals that it's because Ikuto is a guy. At this, all the ladies lose their minds because not a single one of them has seen a man before. Later, when Ikuto wakes up, he's relieved because he thinks he's still in Japan till the girls reveal that they have no idea where the island is located. Grandma then explains that though they're also Japanese, they drifted to the island 130 years ago after a shipwreck and have been stuck there ever since. Hearing this, Ikuto worries about getting back home, but Grandma tells him to look on the bright side as she subtly pimps her granddaughter to get some action. Later, on their way to Suzu's house, a girl named Ayane spies on them and tries to stop Suzu from having Ikuto all to herself, but she accidentally shoots a dart at Ikuto and knocks him out cold. When Ikuto wakes up, Suzu plays nurse to Ikuto, who suddenly realizes he'd be better off taking prescriptions from ChatGPT. Suzu then suggests he take a bath, and Ikuto finally relaxes as he daydreams about Suzu, but can't believe his luck when she joins him in the bath, blowing his brains right out of his nose. Suddenly, Ayane shows up in the bath too and flashes Ikuto with the mosquito bites on her chest. But then, the ladies get into a contest of who has the best assets to keep Ikuto entertained and end up bleeding the poor dude dry.
Damn!
A few moments later, Suzu resumes her nursing duties and realizes her patient has been replaced with a decoy. Meanwhile, Ayane wakes Ikuto from his beauty sleep by dragging him through the streets while riding an angry bird. Luckily for him, some other chick named Rin trips Ayane, who then falls in a river and washes away. Relieved, Ikuto thinks he's finally found someone normal till she tries to shoot her shots with lines she got from pub videos. Ikuto manages to escape, but before he knows it, he's being chased down by every thirsty chick in town. When he finally stopped to wonder why he was being hunted for sport, Granny shows up and explains to him that he's the only guy to show up on the island in decades and everyone is lacking vitamin. Hearing this, Ikuto decides it's time to leave and finds a boat to get off the island, but the girls don't bother trying to stop him while he lives his pipe dreams. Suddenly, Ikuto's boat gets stuck in a whirlpool, and he gets tossed back on the beach. At this, Grandma explains that it's impossible to leave the island, causing Ikuto to remember all the times his dad told him he was a failure. Determined, Ikuto stubbornly gets back on the boat. However, he gets tossed back every single time until he thinks he's figured out a pattern. He tries to test his plan, but this time, his boat gets hit by an orca, throwing him into the sea. Thankfully, before the idiot drowns, Suzu rescues him and explains that the orca was actually saving him from becoming minced meat in the most dangerous whirlpool. Ikuto finally accepts that his escape plan is hopeless, and Suzu welcomes him to his new home on the island. Later on, Suzu explains to Ikuto that the island was once filled with more than enough sausage wheelers to go around for the starving girls, but a massive wave that only appears once in a century emerged to wash them all away from the island. Ikuto thought the wave would be his way out of the island, but hearing that it only appears once in a century ruins whatever potential plan he has. The night soon erupts into another round of chaos as Ayane shows up to kidnap Ikuto, but Suzu is able to fight off the little annoying bug. However, things go from bad to horrible when Suzu's house is surrounded by zombie-like girls who are there to test out his woodpecker. Granny explains that the lack of men on the island has made him the most sought-after commodity in the region. She then calms the girls down, assuring them that a solution will be found through a hide-and-seek tournament to be held the next day. The next morning, Granny informs Ikuto that he has to hide as the groom, and whoever grabs him will claim him as their personal lollipop provider. Fueled by the determination that he doesn't want Ikuto Jr., he agrees to the tournament. Before the game, the grandma sets out the rules, which are that whoever grabs him before sundown will be declared the winner. She also warns that the game should be conducted in the western forest, and under no condition should Ikuto enter the eastern forest. The moment the game starts, Ikuto bolts into the forest, and the girls immediately chase after him, including Suzu. However, Suzu isn't after him. She's in the game to stop the other girls from catching him. While running, Suzu encounters Ayane, who has no idea what's going on. Ayane prepares to fight as usual, but Suzu uses her face as a springboard to leap closer to Ikuto's position. Suzu erupts into full ninja mode as she swiftly dispatches all the girls, who are trying to get their hands on Ikuto. Ikuto continues running, and believing that he is still being chased down by the melon wielders, he leaps off a cliff but manages to grab another edge of the cliff. Just as he is about to climb up the cliff, he finds Ayane's sister Machi, waiting to claim her prize, not ready to marry into a family of psychotic and persistent trauma princesses. He unhands the cliff and falls into the river below. Ikuto ends up falling off a waterfall, but before he can hit the water, he is swiped off by another girl riding a low-budget turkey. Ikuto wakes up after passing out, only to find himself hanging in the air. He screams out his lungs, scaring his emergency ride, and the girl dumped him right in the middle of the eastern forest. Ikuto soon learns why the eastern forest is forbidden when the entire plant species in the forest is on a mission to make him their next meal. Just as he is about to meet his ancestors, he is saved by Suzu, who stretches her hand to lift him up. Ikuto is about to take her hand when he remembers that Suzu is also part of the game. He ends up making a run for it, and the hot chase continues. As the sun sets, Ikuto taps into his monkey instincts to hide in a tree, but nothing is stopping the girls from having a taste of his golden woodpecker. Just when they are about to achieve their dream, the girls pass out from Ayane's paralytic mist. However, Ikuto manages to trick her into the river below, thus surviving the ordeal. Ikuto is about to commend himself for winning when Granny appears out of nowhere, telling him that he lost. Ikuto demands to know how, and Granny explains that during the entire rush, he had ended up touching Suzu's melons without even realizing it. Ikuto is still arguing about the results when Suzu drops a heart-wrenching reply, telling Ikuto that she obviously doesn't want him because his sausage is smaller than her pinky. Bruh. Suzu then tells Ikuto that he is free to choose whoever he wants whenever he is ready, with Granny adding that he has a lifetime to spend on the Forsaken Island. The next day, Ikuto looks through his old bag to search for anything that can make his new marriage sweeter. While doing this, Suzu spots a box, which she calls pretty. The said box turns out to be a cell phone, but since they're living in a mysterious, time-frozen island setting, Suzu has no idea what a cell phone even is. After breakfast, Suzu stands up to fetch water, but an overconfident Ikuto offers to help. He soon regrets the decision when he realizes he's never actually used his muscles for anything before. His fragile ego takes a heavy hit when he spots another girl, Rin, effortlessly carrying a water jar the size of a boulder. Desperate to redeem his Sigma pride, Ikuto tries to race her, but collapses just a few feet away like a fallen background character. Rin's sister, Mikoto, soon joins them, and surprisingly, she is the only girl on the island who doesn't want to associate herself with a broke, weak loser like Ikuto. And this is because she prefers her sister to having to deal with the emotional stress that comes with a man. After surviving Mikoto's harsh words, Ikuto and Suzu continue whatever chores they can get their hands on around the house. Running out of his manly strength, Ikuto believes that he has done pretty well, until Suzu tells him that everything they have been doing is nothing but house chores, and there are much tougher chores. Ikuto soon finds himself at the farm, and, trying to act all cool, he tells them to leave the potato harvesting to him. He casually grabs the potato leaf to pull it out, until he realizes that he is recording another reel, while the girls stare at him in disappointment. Suzu finally joins him to pull the potato, only for him to find out that the potato is rivaling a celebrity's bunda. Things get even weirder when he realizes that every produce on the farm is plus-sized and can audition for a modeling gig. Continuing with the day's chores, they arrive at the mushroom farm, and Ikuto jumps straight into action to help. He tries yanking out one of the mushrooms, and he gets even more serious when Suzu mentions the word impossible close to him. Suddenly, Ikuto's trash luck hits again, and the mushroom comes to life, swallowing him up. Failing to digest Ikuto because he tastes more poison than food, the mushroom spits his manga version out before drying off. Suzu then tells him that there are monsters hiding among the mushrooms, but they die after eating a human. However, differentiating the real mushrooms and the fake is something none of the islanders have been able to pull off. Suzu suggests that he trust his instincts, and Ikuto dives straight into the mushroom to show that he is cool. However, he gets eaten by every single mushroom he thinks is the real one. One of the girls triggers his daddy issues when she mentions that Ikuto pulling off the mission is impossible. This sends Ikuto straight into full-on Terminator mode as he dashes toward the mushrooms, and after a hard-fought battle, Ikuto ends up defeating all of the fake mushrooms before even realizing it. The girls commend his work ethic, saying he finally counted for something, but this only makes things harder for him, and he walks into the woods to sulk like some trashed background character. He is about to fall into full-on depression mode when Rin shows up on the scene to cure him, placing his hand on her well-rounded melons, which in turn gives him a nosebleed. Ikuto is enjoying this so well until another girl, Yukino, shows up to ruin the perfect moment for him. Later that day, Suzu lifts his drowning spirit by telling him that she enjoys his company because it makes her feel like she has a family. Ikuto heaves a sigh of relief when he hears this because something good finally happened to him before the day ran out. Up next, Ayane sits down to enjoy a bowl of rice cakes, and it is after finishing the entire bowl that she finds a well-placed note to not eat by her sister, leaving her totally freaked out. Meanwhile, Suzu and Ikuto are on a radish delivering mission to the Sea Dragon Shrine, which is high above the village. Not long after this, Machi pops out like a game menu, promising the glutton, Suzu, 20 rice cakes if she can help her track down her runaway sister. Suzu accepts the deal and gets down to setting a trap in the woods before leaping onto a rock to make a loud announcement that Ayane is the queen of flat-chesters. Surprisingly, Ayane appears out of nowhere to defend her teeny-weeny melons, but soon realizes that Suzu has put her sister up for hunt. Just as Suzu is about to capture her, Ayane engages her ugly pet bed to whisk her out of there, while making sure Ikuto tags along for the involuntary ride. The two are cruising through the woods when Suzu suddenly intercepts them, and realizing that there is no escaping Suzu whenever she is on the edge, Ayane makes a deal with Suzu. She urges her to find her sister's weak point in exchange for 30 rice cakes. Without thinking twice, Suzu sells whatever lowly integrity she has left for the deal. Suzu storms off to complete her mission, and at the same time, Ayane makes her way into the village to also help herself by gathering information on her sister's weakness. After long and tiring hours of trying to find her sister's weakness, Ayane fails to come up with something that could help her take on her sister head-on. She is about to give up when Suzu shows up, saying she knows Machi's secret. She ends up spewing nonsense, and unknown to Ayane, Machi is already behind her. Frustrated by her recent failures, Ayane screams out, calling Machi an old single lady who would have a better chance at being a nun than ending up in a loving marriage. Machi hears this, and her entire world comes crashing down. Suzu then calls Ayane's attention to the fact that Machi is behind her, but her insult appears to be working wonders. Suzu had brought Machi to where Ayane is after she promised her 50 rice cakes. Realizing that the insults are working, Ayane adds more fuel to the already raging fire. However, her victory doesn't last as Machi employs her Chikagi to beat Ayane up blue-black. Later on, Suzu and Ikuto are running an errand when she trips over a wet surface and ends up breaking an Ajizo statue, which is said to be cursed. Ikuto, on the other hand, appears to be pretty calm because he is not a believer in the mystical realm. He patches the statue up, but as they leave, the statue's eyes turn red. At night, Suzu fails to eat her food because of the fear that she is being haunted. And just as feared, she spots a scary presence at the door, causing her to scream out like a mad woman. The next day, Ayane makes it her life mission to use Suzu's fear of ghosts against her. Enjoying the trouble a little too much, she shows up at night to continue her prank, only for her to run into the cursed spirit. She screams out in fear, forcing Ikuto to rush out to find her lying on the ground. He tries helping her up when she mumbles about spirits, but Ikuto doesn't believe her. Ikuto returns to his room to find a funny-looking spirit holding Suzu hostage. Ikuto acts like a man for once and straight up punches some sense and manners into the ghost. Even after defeating the spirit and calmly exorcising it, Ikuto maintains his stupid belief that there are no ghosts whatsoever. At this point, even ghosts believe in him more than he believes in ghosts. Sometime later, Yukino walks around the house, looking for her oversized bear, only to find her in the jam shop, gulping every jam container that she can lay her hands on as if she is competing in an eat and burst competition. Yukino is disgusted by her gluttonous acts, and she compares her to Suzu, who can't control herself around rice cakes. Kuma hears who she is comparing her to and immediately loses it. After she runs off, Yukino manages to find Ikuto and Suzu, who are busy fishing. Yukino is accompanied by her group of trained animals that have left illiteracy in the hands of our dumb main character. Yukino confesses that Kuma has run off, and she needs their help to find her. They split into a team of two, with Yukino quickly pairing herself up with Ikuto, while Suzu is dragged away by the trained animals. Ikuto carries Yukino on his shoulders, and as they walk through the woods, they find bare footprints, leaving them to automatically assume it is Kuma. They follow the prints only to run into a bear that got angry after being called an old dude. He punches them away from his territory, forcing them to continue their search. They find a bunch of other brown bears, but they continue hitting a dead end. While taking a break, Yukino explains how much Kuma meant to her because she has been with her the longest. She is practically her go-girl bestie, and they grew up together. Realizing how important Kuma is to Yukino, Ikuto taps into his reserved energy source so that they can continue searching for Kuma. Suzu runs into Ayane, and as usual, she challenges her to one of her useless duels, claiming that she is now faster. However, Suzu renders her training useless by knocking her down with just one punch, while dunking on her wasted training. After hours of searching, Ikuto comes up with the genius idea to draw Kuma's portrait and show it to the animals. But the first bear he finds sends him flying with a punch to the head. Yukino tells him that the bear is startled by his really ugly face. Ikuto tries to make things better by putting on a fake beard, but this earns him more beatings than before. Trying to make the impossible possible as usual, Ikuto continues searching through the woods, but all he gets is severe beatings until he finally finds a peaceful animal that shows him the way. Excited, Ikuto carries Yukino on his shoulders and runs in the said direction until they find a tiny bridge. Scared of heights, Ikuto pulls back, but Yukino jumps down to continue the journey. Suddenly, the bridge snaps and breaks, but before Yukino can fall off, Ikuto dives in like Superman with no brain to grab her. The two remain stranded until Kuma grabs the bridge and spins them to safety. Surprisingly, Kuma has also been searching for Yukino, believing that she also ran away from home. In the end, Ikuto runs off after getting worded out that he can now understand the animals pretty much the same as Yukino and Suzu. One beautiful morning, Ikuto picks up a needle-like wooden sword and starts swinging it around like he is practicing to cut air. Suzu finds him doing this and asks him why he woke up early in the morning to act pretty jobless. Ikuto then tells her that he is practicing to effectively protect the girls on the island, since it is his job to do so. Suzu, on the other hand, has no idea what he is talking about, since she has been an independent lady all her life. The time comes for them to carry some cargo, and Ikuto plans to use this as an avenue to prove why he is a man, but he fumbles it so hard, he struggles to carry just one, while the person he is supposed to protect is easily carrying 3. Just then, Mother Nature decides to take a laugh at them by triggering an earthquake, which immediately turns Suzu into scaredy pants. She grabs Ikuto like he is tissue and drags him along. Later that day, Suzu excitedly walks into the bathroom to cleanse off Ikuto's stench on her body, to find the bathtub conveniently dry like a wasteland. It turns out that the island's hot springs dried up after the earthquake that shattered the water pipes. To make sure that they don't go without bathing, the girls pour water into a jar and heat it up. The group finally settles down after their stressful bath. This is when Ikuto opens his big loud mouth to say bathing is not essential, since wiping with a towel is better. This triggers the hidden disgust inside the girls, who immediately turn on him, saying he is dirty trash, which is why he kept pushing all the girls away with his horrendous stench. Realizing how important bathing is to the girls, Ikuto leaves early in the morning to fix the problem, but leaves a note behind for Suzu. Knowing that Ikuto is nothing more than a clumsy loser, the girls gather their equipment and follow him. They open the well and realize that it is filled with dirt. Without thinking twice, Suzu and Ikuto dive into the well to clear it up. In the process of doing this, Mother Nature decides to take another dig at them by triggering another earthquake that sends them deeper into the underground spring. Since they can't climb back the way they came, Ikuto's brain comes in clutch when he notices air blowing toward them from a narrow exit, and he suggests that they follow the path. Ikuto carries Suzu on his back since she got injured after their last fall. They manage to find an exit, but it is too high for them to climb. Ikuto's brain comes to life, since he is trying everything to prove to Suzu that he is a man. He figures out that breaking open the spring source will cause a pressure surge that should be enough to get them out of the hole. While smashing the rock, it grabs the attention of the gigantic resident water monster in the cave. After repeated smashing, Ikuto finally cracks the pleasure spot and water comes splurting out, which perfectly launches them out before the water monster thinks of making them its next meal. Suzu celebrates in tears that Ikuto has managed to solve their water crisis, and Ikuto acts all cool, reminding her that it is his job as a man to protect her. But even though she is totally clueless about what he means, she is happy to be around him. Days later, Ikuto and Suzu embark on a journey into the southern forest, and Suzu tells him that she can't wait to show him her master, who is proficient in all types of martial arts. With the way she is hyping him, Ikuto already imagines a scary monster in his head. In addition, Suzu's master is the Lord of the South, and this brings back grim memories of how he almost got squashed by the Lord of the East. Suddenly, the master's voice comes echoing from behind, sending a chill down Ikuto's body. But he is struck with disappointment when he realizes that the master is a short, funny-looking two-tailed cat running on an aura debit. After a brief description of why he is Suzu's master, the cat reveals that he summoned them to invite them to an event called the Survival Game Day. It is basically an event where the cat tribe goes up against the dog tribe to select the lord of the forest, since they are the ones dominating the forest. The master reveals that the dog tribe has been gaining the edge, which is why he called on Suzu and Ikuto for help. Hearing that there is something he can be useful for in his worthless life, Ikuto excitedly agrees to help out. Soon afterward, the game begins, and the two teams charge toward each other. Suzu and Ikuto soon run into a bunch of conveniently placed banana peels, causing them to fall, but before the dog in charge can get the better of them, Ikuto disposes of him, and the chase continues. Not long after this, the two find themselves surrounded by a well-planned dog circle, but Ikuto knocks them into the ground with a single strike. As they approach the dog leader, he makes fun of Suzu and Ikuto's efforts, saying it is impossible to win against his team. This is all it takes for Ikuto to charge head-on like a creepy anime maniac after a girl's worn pants. Before he can get to the dog leader, Machi and Ayane pop out of nowhere, declaring that they are Team Dog. Machi takes on Ikuto, while Ayane picks her favorite opponent as usual, Suzu. While Ikuto and Machi are busy fighting with their words, Ayane and Suzu are going hard at it, and it ends up in Suzu's victory as usual. The dog's well-laid-out plan comes in clutch, and they secure the victory. But just as they are about to celebrate, they realize that they took out a fake cat leader. Before they know what's happening, the real cat leader dives straight at the dog leader to knock him down, ultimately switching the victory in their favor. Ayane ends up cooking for the entire dog population for being trash in the competition and failing to secure the win for them. The next morning, Ikuto wakes to Machi sitting on him, and before the sleep even leaves his eyes, Machi tells him that they are going on a flower sightseeing, and he gets no say in the matter. Apparently, it is the time of year to view the sakura tree in its full bloom. As they approach the northern forest, the girls mention that it is time to split up, and when Ikuto asks why, they tell him that it is the only way to avoid the short-tempered lord of the northern forest. They take different paths, but Ikuto and Machi's path turns out to be the worst, with the chances of dying greater than 1. The group finally met up at the designated location, but their plan to avoid the lord becomes totally futile, as they run into him right at the meetup location. Before they can start wishing they had died along the way, the lord tells them that they have nothing to fear, because he is no longer the terrifying dude that they know after getting whooped some days earlier. He has retired as the Lord of the North and has now taken up the trash job to give people directions to the sakura. After a tedious journey, they finally reach the sakura, and Ikuto realizes that the trouble of seeing the pink-top tree was actually worth it. Sometime later, one of the girls, Chikagi, sits in her stuffed-up library to learn more about men, and she wastes no time cooking up a sinister plan for Ikuto. After she is done, she invites Ikuto and Suzu to her house, which is the only Western-looking house on the land. Apparently, it was built by mysterious Westerners who drifted to the island. They arrive at the door and are welcomed by Chikagi's freaky-looking elephant maid, Panako, who turns Ikuto into a part of the wall. Chikagi, on the other hand, is watching from her room, and she is ready to learn everything there is to a man, even if she has to dissect Ikuto. After settling in, Chikagi enters the room with a pink revealing gown that sends Ikuto's brain into overdrive, giving him a nosebleed. Still trying to prevent his sausage from breaking, Chikagi piles on the misery by showing up in several different freaky clothes. When asked how she got the idea to make Ikuto lose himself to the plot, she drops the numerous books that she has been reading on the table. She explains that there are several times that things have washed up on the island, and being the creepy baddie that she is always there to collect them. Chikagi decides to show them by taking them to her collection room, filled with everything that is washed up, while secretly aiming to add Ikuto to the list, since he is the best thing that is washed up on the island so far. Among the things in the room are a rice cooker and an oven, but they are disappointed that they can't use them, since they have been sent back to the Stone Age, where there is no electricity. When Chikagi realizes that Ikuto and Suzu are about to leave, and she hasn't achieved her goal, she stops them, saying she has already made dinner. Chikagi heads to the kitchen, and she employs a cookbook in an attempt to make the most delicious dishes she can find. Ikuto is anticipating an enticing dish, but when Chikagi shows up with what she has prepared, Ikuto almost vomits his intestines out thanks to how disgusting they look. Chikagi finally gets one dish right after she manages to make the best curry rice that Ikuto has tasted in his ever-boring, worthless life. After they are done eating, Ikuto and Suzu prepare to leave, but Chikagi is not about to let this happen. She resorts to a diabolical means of forcing her octopus to spill goo on them, so they have no choice but to use the bathroom. To avoid losing the seal on his golden woodpecker, Ikuto restrains himself from bathing with the two. After the two are done bathing, Ikuto heads to the bathroom to wash up, but Chikagi is already one step ahead, as she hides in the bathroom to get a good look at Akuto's pew-pew. Hanako enters the bathroom, and since his spec is in the plus-size range, he allows her to scrub his back. Chikagi almost gets the perfect angle to see what she has been aiming for until Hanako ruins her plan when she jumps into the water, almost sending her to the afterlife with her big bund-up. When Suzu and Akuto return home, Suzu jealously reveals her anger that Akuto bathes with Hanako while he refuses to bathe with her. Akuto tries to defend himself by saying Hanako is an elephant, but Suzu doesn't care because she is still a girl, and she lets Akuto know that she has no intention of forgiving him until he bathes with her too. Akuto is walking through the woods one beautiful morning when he runs into Rin, who is simply washing off her masculine ideal. Akuto's brain fries, and he starts suffering from a nosebleed when he sees how plump her melons are, but this earns him a beating from Rin, who tells him to leave. Akuto is shocked to hear this, and he grabs Rin, calling her the best woman on the island, because she is the only one acting like a regular woman with no messed up personality like the others who want him to bathe with them. While he is still praising her for being normal, she punches him again, sending him into the far distance, where he lands with his head. Rin later shows up to comfort him, saying she doesn't want people to see her bare. On their way home, Rin mentions her workplace, and Akuto quickly offers to show up the next day. However, Mikoto, who has been watching from the start, pops out like an unwanted leg sore, telling Akuto that she might actually terminate if he tries to show up. When Akuto returns home, Suzu notices the bump on his head, and she asks him about it. He dodges the question, but fate soon catches up to him when Suzu informs him that she will be following him to Rin's workplace the next day. At Rin's house, her grandmother is glad that she has managed to catch Akuto's sight, even though she is built more like Roman Reigns than Cardi B Mikoto. On the other hand, is sharpening her knife to cut off Akuto's sausage if he tries to make this stupid move to show up. The next day, just as promised, Akuto shows up at the construction shop, accompanied by Suzu. Before settling in, Akuto is introduced to Rin's mother, Risa, who explains the family's weird structure to him. Risa drags Rin closer, telling her to make sure she uses all of her feminine tactics to snatch Akuto away from the clueless and dumb Suzu. Rin takes Akuto away to teach him carpentry, and Mikoto uses the opportunity to move closer to Suzu, telling her that they need to get Akuto away from Rin because he is in love with her. However, Suzu remains clueless as ever, since she has no idea what love or affection is. Mikoto finally gets her attention when she mentions that Rin hit Akuto on the head for staring at her while bathing. It dawns on Suzu that the bump on Akato's head was a result of sneaking around with a masculine lady. While going about her basic chores, Mikoto makes sure that she keeps an eye on Rin and Akuto, and she almost bursts out of anger anytime she sees them closer to each other. Her jealousy takes over, and she decides that she needs to take Akuto out of the equation. She drops a log of wood that almost crushes him, while pretending it was not intentional. She runs over to Akuto to make sure he knows that he is going to die if he gets closer to Rin. This keeps him on his toes throughout the day, as he fears meeting his ancestors. When Rin finally steps away from the construction site, Mikoto seizes the opportunity to challenge Akuto to a duel. Knowing fully well that a chicken will beat him in a fight, he tries to back out, but the word impossible from Mikoto triggers him yet again. This begins their legendary carpentry battle as they try to defeat each other, turning them both into full-on construction monsters. Their stupid little duel comes in handy as they finish up the construction work meant for the whole group. That night, Rin sits in silence, thinking about how she messed up her Riz attempt on Akuto, but Akuto makes her blush by telling her she cooks well. Rin's mother makes Akuto the target of Mikoto's rage when she talks about him marrying her daughter. Akuto makes a run for it when Mikoto shows up with a boulder-sized watermelon, ready to terminate him with it. Sometime later, Mother Nature decides to let out her anger by releasing a massive downpour that keeps everyone in their homes. Suzu tells Akuto that they don't work on rainy days, shocking Akuto because in the outside world, they are always working like undead zombies come sun or snow. Akuto then decides to make breakfast, since there is nowhere to go, and he almost poisons Suzu with his trash dish, which is competing in flavor with a late train. On the other hand, Chikagi leaves her house to carry out a weather investigation while putting on a freaky swimsuit. Before noon, Akuto screams out at the top of his lungs about how frustrated he is that there is nothing for him to do because he was always doing one thing or the other back in Japan. Trying to prevent Akuto from crashing out and losing his sense as a human, Suzu suggests that they play shogi, and Akuto agrees to this. While they are playing the game, Suzu makes mention of the storm that happened the day before Akuto arrived on the island. Akuto doesn't think it's a coincidence, and he makes mention of the possibility that the storm weakened the whirlpool, which is how he ended up on the island. At the mention of this, Suzu zones out, but she comes back to life before Ikuto can start asking her stupid questions like, "Are you pregnant?" After this, Ikuto loses every single round of shogi that they engage in, and Suzu mentions that she once had a partner with whom she plays shogi on rainy days like this one. Ikuto's whole cheerful existence and carefree life come crashing down when Suzu mentions that the said partner is her mother. While the two are going through some emotional moments, Machi and Ayane are back to their usual cat and mouse game in the rain. Yukino is also having a wonderful time racing her pet animals. Yukino, Ayane, Rin, and Machi soon meet up, and just when they are looking for Chikagi, they find her receiving an aggressive baptism in the flooding river. They waste some time rushing after to make sure they save her before she becomes a meal for the fish. Not long after this, the group makes their Avengers move by assembling at Suzu's house. Since they are all free, they brought gifts for Suzu, and this brings joy to Ikuto's heart because Suzu will no longer be lonely on rainy days. The seemingly peaceful gathering soon turns freaky when the girls all decide to spam Ikuto with so much plot more than his mid-sized brain can handle. After the girls leave, Suzu tells Ikuto how glad she is that she has him around. Suzu then ends the day by singing a beautiful song, which her mother taught her. Suzu's voice is so beautiful that it makes Ikuto imagine getting married to her, and he fails to keep it hidden with his thoughts written all over his face. Sometimes later, Ikuto wakes up in the middle of the night to Suzu's moan. The sleep disappears from his eyes when he finds her soaked in the water jar while having a sweet sausage-poking dream about Ikuto. Ikuto grabs her and drags her out of the water to help her, but he ends up suffering a nosebleed when he is met with her big, juicy melons. The next morning, Suzu suffers a fever, and when Granny checks her condition, she tells Ikuto that it is nothing serious, but they need ice to help her. Ikuto is surprised because he hasn't seen ice on the island before, and the old hag teases him, calling him stupid because he hasn't even explored 10% of the weird island. Meanwhile, Yukino's mother, Kagami, is busy making ice cream with the ice packs stored away for use. Ikuto arrives at the storage cave, and when Yukino takes him there, the weird woman has no choice but to confess to what she has done. Since her dumb and craving to be young again mother has used up all the ice, Yukino suggests that they head to the peak of the mountain to get ice. At the same time, Machi is craving for something chilly, and she forcefully summons Ayane with her straw doll just to order her to get her some ice. Ikuto and the weird family are heading to the mountain in a cart when Ikuto notices Machi sitting at the back of the cart. Not ready to deal with her annoying send-me-to-heaven personality, he discourages her from following them. Ayane arrives at the ice storage cave to find nothing, but Machi points her to the same mountain where Ikuto is headed. After so much trouble, they reach the top of the mountain, only for Ikuto to find out that they are there to watch the beautiful scenery, and gathering snow is the secondary assignment. While gathering the snow, Yukino makes Ikuto suffer a nosebleed by pressing her melons against him from behind. His blood freezes up, providing another form of excitement for Yukino's animals. As he pushes the cart down the mountainside, Ikuto gains extra motivation when he remembers that Suzu is suffering in her sick bed. He dashes down the steep road, and he notices the warning sign too late, causing him to fall below. Meanwhile, Yukino and the others are falling down the mountain due to an avalanche, and just as Ikuto is about to reach the top, he gets thrown off by the falling group. Ikuto and the ball of snow get thrown directly in front of Machi, who simply scoops the ice she needs without even caring if the group is breathing or not. Ikuto grabs some of the snow in his clothes and rushes home, but Yukino's bird makes it easier for him by giving him a ride home. By the time he got home, all that was left of the ice was nothing but a small puddle, and to make things worse, Suzu was already better. In the end, Ikuto comes down with a fever thanks to the stress he went through, and the puddle of ice he brought ends up being what is needed to treat him. At Machi's house, she keeps skipping her turn to cook, leaving everything for her annoying little sister. Tired of doing all the chores herself, Ayane taunts Machi, telling her that cooking 1-0-1 is a skill needed to marry, and without it, Machi might as well just say goodbye to whatever love life she is dreaming about in her head. This gets to Machi, and she angrily stands up with all the motivation of a wrestler. She heads to Chikagi's house to beg her for cooking lessons, and mind you, Chikagi has an minus when it comes to cooking.
Only language you speak is failure!
Instead of accepting that she is trash, Chikagi accepts Machi into her rated cooking academy. She ends up making a mess all in the name of preparing a dish, and no one tells Machi before she silently takes her things and leaves like a dejected housewife. Machi then makes her final stop at Rin's house to ask for her guidance. However, Machi is too dull to be specific about what guidance she needs, and she ends up making a beautiful lunchbox instead of a delicious dish. After her sister calls her the most foolish girl on the planet, Machi heads back to Rin's house the next morning to tell her that she actually needs guidance on cooking. not carpentry. Rin takes her into the kitchen to put her through the stages of cooking, but Machi is more interested in the sharp knife she is holding and the various things she can do with it. When Ikuto hears about this, he tells Suzu and Ayane that cooking skills are not essential in the outside world, since they can waltz into stores to buy any type of dish they want. Ikuto blames this on the fact that everyone is always busy, and there is little time to cook. However, Ayane disagrees, saying the outsiders are nothing but plus-sized, lazy rookies. Suzu adds that when cooking for a loved one, you never get tired, since the love blinds you and makes you stupid. Not long after this, Machi sends a message arrow to Ikuto, inviting him to dinner. That night, the trio heads to Machi's house, but a disabled Rin shows up, telling them not to go because terrible things are bound to happen if Machi cooks for them. They take the warning seriously and want to escape, but Machi's Shikagami scares them right into the house. Once they settle down, Machi heads to the kitchen to sharpen her knife, while she has her Shikagami holding the door to make sure that her captives do not escape. Suddenly, they start hearing eerie sounds coming from the kitchen, causing them to almost jump out of their skins. They try to check out what is happening in the kitchen, but the Shikagamis scare them back. Machi soon shows up with several plates of raw food that look more like poison than delicacy. Ikuto manages to take a bite, and he suddenly loses his bodily function, giving the girls that he has passed out. Surprisingly, he screams out, saying the food is delicious. The two believe that he is messing with them until they eat it, and agree that it is nice. This turns out to be a mistake on their path, because it gave Machi the horrendous audacity to step into the kitchen to bring out more sea monsters, disguised as food for them to eat. The trio screams out in fear, regretting that they complimented her poisonous food in the first place. Up next, Suzu is working in the kitchen when Ikuto pops up out of nowhere, asking Suzu what she is working on. Suzu mentions that she is trying to make tofu, because it is her tenkatsu, her pet's birthday. The moment Suzu mentions this, something in Ikuto snaps like he just remembered that he is a sore loser who can't get girls. Later on, Ikuto sits down to stare at a photograph of him and a girl, who is also celebrating her birthday that very day. He leaves the photograph when Suzu requires his help to make the tofu in tenkatsu's shape. Ayane soon shows up with a bunch of rice cakes to tempt Suzu, but she manages to keep her composure because she needs to finish the tofu before anything else. Suzu and Ayane find the photograph where Ikuto left it, and being the serial instigator that she is, she tells Suzu that the girl in the picture is Ikuto's lover from the outside world. She even comes up with the most touching and romantic imaginative story about their love life to break Suzu's heart. Ayane tries to prove her point by taking Suzu to the riverside where Ikuto is standing and thinking about how depressing his trash life is. Ayane continues to make life harder for Suzu by dragging her to Granny, talking all about Ikuto's lover. However, in Granny's infinite wisdom, she tells Suzu that it is normal for Ikuto to yearn for his former home, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has a lover there. The news of Ikuto's vulnerability soon travels around, and Ren thinks of making her move when his heart is fragile. Yukino hears this and wastes no time stealing her strategy for herself. Practically all the girls are cooking up one plan or two to make sure that they grab Ikuto's heart. Not long after this, Suzu notices that Ikuto is missing, and it dawns on her that he might be trying to leave the island. She rushes over to the beach to find him pushing his boat into the water, but she pulls him back and beats him up really badly. Ikuto then reveals that he is only trying to send a letter that has been safely put in a bottle. The girls also show up on the beach with a variety of dishes to help lift his mood. As they continue to yap like parrots, Ikuto hears them mention his lover, but he quickly hears the air, saying the girl in the picture is his sister, Misaki. This shocks the girls, and they start passing the blame for who started the misinformation around. Just then, Chikagi calls their attention to whatever ritual has been burning on the fire for minutes. It turns out that it is a special ingredient called nigiri that is used to harden tofu. Ikuto mentions that his grandfather is a martial artist, which is why he knows how to make nigiri. Later that day, Suzu picks Tenkatsu up from the neighbors who have been keeping him safe to make sure he doesn't ruin his birthday surprise. Tenkatsu returns home, and he tears up when he sees the surprise tofu cake that Suzu made in his form. Tenkatsu's birthday ends up being a banger, as everyone came to celebrate with him. That night, Ikuto and Suzu sit together, and he tells her how much his sister means to him. Ikuto tries sending the letter, but the whirlpool keeps throwing it back. Just when he is about to give up, he tries one more time, and this time, the letter goes through, causing the two to hug each other in celebration. Weeks later, the girls complain about the sudden disappearance of food items on the island. They are contemplating who might be behind this when Machi steps out of her room with visible snack crumbs on her lips. Everyone's attention immediately shifts to her, as they suspect that she is the notorious grocery thief who has been raiding the village. They all start tailing her to confirm their suspicions, and Machi doesn't build a good defense case for herself as she walks around eating everything she can lay her hands on. When she finally gets tired of the group following her, she speaks up, saying she might be a glutton who consumes anything that looks edible, but she is not behind the potential farming that is about to hit the land. Machi is disappointed that even Ikuto doesn't trust her, and she swears revenge. Enraged, she grabs Ikuto and escapes with him, while none of the girls can do anything about it. The girls decide that it is better to find the food thief than chase after the terrifying Machi. After a hard work of investigative duty, Ikuto is able to draw out a map of where the food thief has attacked, since the events started happening. After a shambolic plan, they suggest that standing guard would be the best solution. Ikuto and Suzu are walking past the cucumber farm when they realize that it has been completely stripped of whatever dignity it has left. That night, they set a food trap for the culprit, and just as expected, the culprit fell for it. Their plan works and they manage to trap her, but she ends up escaping thanks to the mask she was wearing. On Ikuto's end, he also tries his best to catch the thief, but she gives him a run for his money. The team walks around like zombies the next morning because they are sleep-deprived. When they arrive at the house, Ikuto enters the bathroom, only to find a green-haired girl with medium-sized plot washing off, and this immediately gives him a nosebleed. After the girl calms down, she introduces herself as Maymay, and she admits that she was shy. It turns out that she also washed up on the island after her boat ran into a huge problem. She resorted to stealing instead of asking the islanders because she is way shyer than a cat. Ikuto and Suzu then scold her for eating from the cucumber farm, but she claims that this is her companion, Mr. Tono. She mentions that Tono loves cucumbers, and on their way to find Tono, they run into Machi. Knowing that she is a deranged, short-tempered dwarf, Ikuto warns Maymay to be careful around her, but she fears and runs off instead. Rin later showed up to tell them that the cucumber farm at Chikagi's house had also been decimated. Yukino's dog almost sniffs out Maymay inside the costume that she is hiding, but Ikuto gets her to safety. Maymay then explains that Tono is her friend who travels with her at all times. Just then, Ikuto hears that Yukino's dog has caught Tono's scent. They rush over to the river, and when Tono reveals itself, it turns out to be a turtle, not a person like they were expecting. Maymay forgets the risk of getting caught and runs over to hug Tono. Machi steps up to punish Maymay and her annoying pet because they were the ones who allowed the girls to falsely accuse her. Before she can unleash her wrath, Ikuto grabs her from behind, urging her to forgive Maymay, and all the girls are also in support of this. Because Ikuto asks so nicely, Machi ends up forgiving her. After the whole mess has been settled, Maymay officially becomes a resident on the island, and Suzu gives the watermill close to her place to live. Ikuto asks after Maymay, and Suzu reveals that she went to get vegetables with her pet, which turns out to be a kappa, not a turtle. Maymay, on the other hand, is having serious difficulty speaking to the Islanders, and when she manages to say hi to the two of them, she ends up scaring them off because of her usual Halloween-type costume. When the two calm down and decide to talk to her, Maymay vanishes like a fart. Maymay returns home to tell Suzu and Ikuto how bad her social skills are. Suzu then asks her how she met Tono, and she resorts to a picture-type storytelling to make everything easier to understand. One day, Maymay was on her usual try-to-make-friends journey when it started raining, and she was forced to hide under a bridge. This was when she noticed a pile of stones under the bridge, and coincidentally, Tono was sealed inside the stones by a monk because he had done something bad long ago. Maymay broke the seal to free Tono, but when he came to, his once-beloved river home was gone. Since she lacks the social skills to make human friends, Maymay has no choice but to make Tono her friend. Since then, they have been together, and after hearing her story, Suzu breaks down in tears, but Ikuto maintains his alpha male signature to hold back emotions. Later on, Maymay gets the sudden dumb motivation that she can talk to people herself without having to count on Suzu and Ikuto. She tries leaving the house herself, but she hasn't taken 10 steps when it dawns on her that she is not that girl. Suzu and Ikuto pity her, and they agree to escort her to meet people. They head to Rin's house, but Rin's first statement to her almost makes her go crazy. She finally pulls herself together to thank Rin for helping her repair the house she is now staying in. Rin is happy to hear this and almost chokes Maymay out in the name of hugging her. On their way home, they run into Yukino, and instead of greeting her normally, she ends up scaring her away when she tries to greet her with her bear costume. Meanwhile, Ayane found out late that Maymay has now become a resident on the island, and in her usual insane fashion, she decides to stalk Maymay to know what kind of person she is. Just when Ayane is about to stir up trouble by hitting Maymay with her dart, she overhears her woes. She pities her and decides to approach her like a normal person. However, the moment Maymay sees her, she mistakes her for Machi, and she almost runs off to the moon. Trying to outdo her hateful sister, Ayane drops a big word of motivation for Maymay, telling her to love herself. This word of motivation gets to Maymay, making it the first time in the history of the universe that Ayane did something not violent. Things end up worse for her when she finds out that Tono is a kappa. This triggers her traumatic memories with a kappa, forcing her to run a relay race around the island just to escape Tono. It takes Suzu's athletic brilliance to finally stop her, and it was later found out that Machi was the one who disguised herself as a kappa to scare the living daylight out of Ayane. Other girls later show up at the house to make Maymay feel at home, so she can conquer her innate shyness. Up next, Suzu's master shows up at the house, shocking Suzu, who asks him why he came. The dude reveals that he has an important message for the Lord of the West, but he couldn't find him. Apparently, there was a newcomer who defeated the Lord of the East, and when Suzu hears this, she adds that there is news flying around about the Lord of the North losing to someone too. It turns out that these two lords lost to the same strange warrior, and it was left to Suzu's master to conduct an investigation into who this strange fellow is. Suzu's master mentions that the person of interest who defeated the two lords has been seen by eyewitnesses in the area. Suzu's master describes the said person, and it immediately dawns on Akudo that the troublemaker is their new resident pet Tono. At the same time, the Lord of the East, a fluffy white panda, arrives at Tono's house to demand a rematch. Maymay interferes, saying it is bad to fight, but the moment the panda sees Maymay, he falls for her and wastes no time grabbing her. He declares his intention to make Maymay his bride, which results in another standoff between him and Tono. However, before they get the chance to hit each other, Suzu's master steps in to knock them both down. He lets the panda know that things are going to get really worse for him if he causes a ruckus in the Western Territory because of how terrifying the Lord of the West is. The panda fears for his life, but suddenly remembers that the Lord of the West is nowhere to be found. Since this is the case, Suzu's master decides to challenge the panda to a duel, but realizing that he has no chance, the panda makes a run for it, carrying Maymay with him. It turns into a full-on chase, but before the panda can make it to his territory, the former Lord of the North intercepts him, punching him to the ground. The former Lord of the North, the big cat, reveals that he is not there for the panda, but for the person who defeated him and took the lordship role from him. Just then, he points to the said person, and to their surprise, this person is Maymay, the shy, weak crybaby. Maymay argues with the big cat, saying she has no memory of them fighting. Apparently, during their first and only encounter, Maymay was trying to escape the big cat, but coincidentally dropped a boulder on him, and he counts this as a good strategy from her. Just when everyone is trying to process how this makes sense, the Lord of the East vanishes again. The team runs after him, and he is pretty fast for his size. Before he can escape, the big cat appears in front of him, knocks him into the distance, and claims Maymay for himself. The big cat says Maymay has to rule the northern forest, but Akudo steps in to defend her, saying Maymay is not going anywhere. The big cat then proposes a duel for who is going to take Maymay, but it is pretty obvious that Akudo has no chance. However, his dignity as a man is on the line, and after being plummeted by the big cat, he still gets back on his feet to fight. The suffering continues until a strange being flies past Akudo to tell him the cat's weak point, which is between his tails. Akudo does as told, and with just one hit, he defeats the big cat. As promised, the big cat has no choice but to hand over Maymay to Akudo. On his way back to the northern forest, he runs into the Lord of the West, who confesses that he was the one who revealed his weak spot to Akudo. Later on, Maymay holds Akudo's hand, thanking him for saving her, and Suzu stands beside them, clearly overwhelmed with jealousy. Weeks later, Chikagi finds a suspicious-looking book in her room, and instead of flinging it, she reads it. The moment she does this, a burst of lightning rains down on every household that very night. The next morning, the islanders wake up to see that they have grown anime-like features, while the animals have gained human-like features. The entire village has gone into absolute chaos, leaving Suzu and Akudo entirely confused. Akudo and Suzu are walking around in confusion when they run into Chikagi, who is perfectly fine in the midst of the Zootopia paradise. Chikagi comes clean, saying she is responsible for everything because she has become a magician overnight, even though she never attended Hogwarts. Ayane, being the most pained of everything, showed up to teach Chikagi a lesson. Even with this, Chikagi doesn't care as she is enjoying her magicians a little too well. Suzu tells the team that they are the only ones who can solve their problems, and they make their way to Chikagi's library. Inside the library, they find a book named Seal, and from inside an ugly genie emerges, giving the teams 7 wishes. The team doesn't believe him until they have wasted 4 of the said wishes. This is when it finally dawns on them to use one of the wishes to capture Chikagi. Their plan worked out pretty well, but their little brains forgot to tell them that the genie responds to any wish thrown his way. Chikagi takes advantage of this and asks to be freed. The genie grants her wish, and with this, they have just 1 wish left. While they are thinking of what to do with the last wish, Machi walks in and subtly asks for a cup of coffee. The genie grants her wish. This leaves Chikagi the only person capable of using magic on the island. She makes sure to make her wild, dark, freaky fantasies come through. Before she gets the chance to finish her mission, Panako, who is now human, shows up and hits her with a reality stone. Chikagi's magic shatters, and everyone on the island returns to normal. But when Ikuto wakes up, he assumes that everything that happened was nothing but a dream. Days later, Ikuto gets a marriage interview from Mikoto, saying he is required to come over to pick one of her sisters because their mother has been disturbing them. But she is not interested in Ikuto because she already has Rin. It is now left for him to pick among her remaining sisters. The next day, Suzu and Ikuto step out, heading toward Mikoto's house. Suzu explains that Mikoto is from a family of ninjas, and she is the lastborn. Their conversation is interrupted when they find one of Mikoto's ninja sisters, Shinobu, lying weakly on the ground. They take her home to take care of her, and after munching on plates of rice, Shinobu finally has the strength to talk. Apparently, she has been on a ninja journey for the past couple of months, which is why she didn't even know that Ikuto is a man. When Suzu finally explains to her how Ikuto drifted to the island like a trash bag, Shinobu makes the sudden move to challenge Ikuto to a duel. Ikuto is confused by this, and Shinobu explains that during her training, she ran into several masters and eyewitnesses who told her that a man just drifted to the island, and he is a master swordsman. With what Shinobu heard, Ikuto can even slice mountains with his sword, but Ikuto, knowing fully well that he is trash, refuses to honor the duel challenge. Shinobu would not let this go, and she continues pestering Ikuto, asking him for a duel. She lies down with him, eats with him, and even bathes with him, just to make sure he accepts the challenge. Jealous and tired of seeing Shinobu's ugly face around, Suzu screams at Ikuto, telling him to accept the duel challenge. Ikuto is surprised by this, but he has no choice but to accept the duel, and he starts training himself in preparation. On the day of the duel, Shinobu shows up wearing a freaky outfit. The fight begins, and the two match each other. After swinging at each other for so long, Ikuto ends up winning the match with a fluke when he grabs Shinobu's precious melons. This counts as the first strike, and Shinobu admits defeat even though Ikuto thinks it's not right. After the duel, Shinobu sets off on another ninja journey, but this doesn't end well for her as she ends up falling into a ditch. Up next, Ikuto picks up a horror novel in Chikagi's house, where the villain is a dude named Beniyasha. Chikagi lets him know that the book was written by an islander, and there are other volumes. During their conversation, Ikuto meets Chikagi's mother. Suddenly, it starts raining, and the rain brings thunder with it. Chikagi's mother urges Ikuto to rush back home because Suzu is the only one at home, and she is most definitely scared. At the house, Suzu receives a weird invitation out of nowhere. The invitation is to come to a certain inn. Ikuto and Suzu later find out that Maymay also got an invitation. Apparently, the invitation came from a lady named Sakuya, but none of them knows who Sakuya is. They arrive at the inn, and they are welcomed by Sakuya, who turns out to be a mechanical doll. She mentions that she has no previous memory of her life, only the fact that she arrived on the island in a box. Surprisingly, Suzu and Ikuto are not the only ones who got the invitation, but everyone else on the island. With Ikuto's arrival, they are already thinking of how they are going to stroke his golden sausage when they are in the bath together. Moments later, Ikuto learns that Sakuya didn't send them any invitation letter. In fact, she was the one who received a proposal letter from them that they would like to visit the inn. She scans the writing on the letter and reveals that the handwriting is not hers. Chikagi enters the room to check out the letter, and she drops the bombshell that they must have been gathered by Beniyasha. Chikagi explains that Beniyasha was a real person who lived on the island, and he committed several atrocities until he suddenly disappeared 15 years ago alongside Shizumaru, who was writing novels about him. Sakuya then assures them that they have nothing to worry about because they are under her care. Worried about the whole thing, Ikuto decides to tell the group about Beniyasha, and not long after this, a weird figure appears in the forest. Sakuya goes full-on Terminator mode until they find out that it is no one scary but Shinobu. Later on, Ikuto gets up to enter the bath, and Ayane decides to follow him so her dreams can finally come true. She rushes into the bath to find Ikuto backing her. She rushes over, but instead of Ikuto, she runs into a figure wearing a red devil mask. She screams out in fear, causing Sakuya and Ikuto to rush over. They find her unconscious, and when they manage to get her back to life, she reveals what she saw. Ayane's body starts to itch her like her skin is about to fall off. Suddenly, the infamous Beniyasha appears in the room, standing on a tree just to Ora Farm. Ikuto asks him what his deal is, and he reveals that he just likes to see girls suffer. He mentions that Ayane's itching will stop, but it will last for a whole week. However, he has the antidote with him. Ikuto is about to negotiate the release of the antidote when Sakuya loses her cool because Beniyasha attacked someone under her care. Beniyasha runs for it, forcing Sakuya and Ikuto to chase him through the forest. Sakuya resorts to the use of missiles, but Beniyasha still escapes. Ikuto suggests that they return to the inn, and at the inn, the girls are making plans on how to get Ikuto into their beds. Chikagi comes up with the idea of waiting in their respective rooms before Ikuto returns. Sakuya and Ikuto return to the inn to hear Shinobu scream. They rush inside to find Chikagi checking on her. She mentions that Shinobu fainted from too much of a massage. Ikuto then tells Chikagi that Beniyasha is behind everything that has happened. Chikagi fears that there will be more Beniyasha's victims if care is not taken. They hear Maymay scream, and when they rush in, she jumps on Ikuto, ready to get freaky with him. Beniyasha appears, telling them that he used a weird substance that would make Maymay want to do freaky things. Before Beniyasha can get his hands on Yukino, Ikuto shows up in the room. Ikuto stops Beniyasha, forcing him to make a run for it. Later on, Ikuto finds Beniyasha in Suzu's room, trying to get a free cheek claps from her. He chases him off, and they end up on the roof. Beniyasha reminds Ikuto that he is scared of heights, and this works perfectly. Ikuto starts to shake like a leaf on water, but Beniyasha makes him mad when he mentions the word impossible. Ikuto charges toward him, but he throws the antidotes in the air to distract him. Ikuto goes for the antidotes but ends up falling off the roof. Beniyasha turns into a genie mat and flies off, assuring Ikuto that they are going to meet again. In a shocking revelation, it turns out that Chikagi is behind everything, and her mother is Beniyasha. Her mother is also the infamous Arthur Shizumaru, and she likes to write her stories from real-life experiences. Chikagi's mother is interested in Ikuto because he appears to be an intelligent kid, and he is going to be an important character in the story that she is developing. Sometime later, Machi accidentally unseals a tricky raccoon monster by tripping over the statue. The Tenyuki wastes no time wreaking havoc on Machi. Elsewhere, Suzu and Ikuto are fishing when they fall under the annoying tricks of the Tanuki. Machi arrives just in time to stop whatever the Tanuki is doing by exposing it. Machi chases after the Tanuki, but it manages to trick Machi into the water, adding to her frustration. Machi figures out that the Tanuki is getting back at her because her ancestors were the ones who sealed him. Machi manages to get out of the water with a determination to find the Tanuki. She tells Suzu and Ikuto that the Tanuki's disguise will be broken if it faints. Machi heads into the village to find the Tanuki, but the Tanuki is always one step ahead, being the tricky creature that it is. He makes life difficult for Machi, since he can transform into anyone at any time. When Ikuto manages to see through his disguise with Maymay, the Tanuki punishes him by dropping large balls on him. Rin decides to dress as a girl, but she chose the wrong day to do this, since the Tanuki is everywhere, wreaking havoc. Machi ends up tearing up her nice dress to see her belly button, so as to make sure that she is not the tricky Tanuki. Machi blames her luck on the fact that she decided to wear girls' clothes. Every time the raccoon gets the better of Machi, it makes her angrier, but this makes it easy for the raccoon to mess with her. Machi soon engages Ayane in her hunt for the raccoon, and she has no choice, since Machi is going to beat the living daylights out of her if she refuses. Throughout the entire day, the raccoon makes sure to cause chaos in every part of the village. At evening, Suzu mentions the word impossible around Ikuto, and he doesn't react to it. She immediately grabs him, revealing that she has caught the Tanuki. Ikuto's clothes are raised to reveal the protruded belly button. The Tanuki is secured, and then tied alongside Ayane to make sure it doesn't escape. Machi unleashes all the anger that she has been keeping the entire day to seal the Tanuki and return it to its statue state. The group later finds the real Ikuto, where he was lying unconscious, and even after he wakes up, Ayane and Machi make sure to tickle him under the guise that they want to know if he is the real person. One night, Yukino is walking through the border between east and west when a blue feather falls on her hand, leaving her excited. The next day, she sees Suzu by the lake, and she tells her about her discovery the night before. Apparently, the blue feather is said to have come from a legendary bird that blesses whoever finds it. This gets Suzu interested, and she agrees to follow Yukino in search of the legendary bird. Back at the house, the neighbor, the usually talkative chicken, tells Ikuto about the legendary bird, but Ikuto dismisses this, since he is not one to believe in mystical creatures. Instead of following Suzu to find the bird, he decides that he is going to gather firewood to help Suzu out because he has been totally worthless since he arrived on the island. While searching through the forest, Yukino drops the bombshell that the legendary bird doesn't actually bless people because it is nothing but a fairy tale. Suzu's entire hope was relying on this, and the moment Yukino says this, her hope is shattered, leaving her in her default manga figure. They soon find a rare bird, but not what they are looking for, and Yukino, being an animal lover, chases after it. The others follow, and they end up falling into a deep crevice, which is in the deep part of the forest. Ikuto returns home and immediately becomes worried when he realizes that Suzu is not back yet. He heads to Yukino's house, and all Kagami can offer is her panicking voice. Ikuto then decides to head into the forest to search for Suzu, while accompanied by Yukino's animals. As the search intensifies, it starts to rain, making everything worse because now the animals can't track their scent, and Ikuto's voice will be muffled. However, his love for Suzu pushes him to start searching in the rain. Suddenly, the legendary bluebird emerges from the forest, and even though Ikuto doesn't believe in superstitions, he has no choice but to ask the bluebird to lead him to Suzu. Once the bird leads Ikuto to the crevice, he vanishes, and it is later revealed that it was the pale bird they were chasing earlier. Ikuto and the girls then manage to rescue Suzu and the trapped crew. Rin also constructs a fence around the crevice to make sure there are no future mishaps. And just as predicted, A&E almost falls in seconds after constructing the fence. That night, Ikuto carries Suzu back home, while revealing his determination to get stronger to protect Suzu. Up next, Ikuto lands a math teaching job at the island school. Chikagi, Shinobu, and Machi are also teachers at the school, and they all handle different classes. While everyone is interested in going to school, there is just one person on the island who isn't, and this is Suzu. Ikuto tries forcing her to go to school, but she always hides whenever he is going. One day, Chikagi comes up with a plan to force Suzu to come to school. She sets up a well-calculated route that they are going to use in luring Suzu to school, and Ikuto is going to be the final nail to trick Suzu into showing up at the school. Ikuto is initially hesitant, but he decides to join the plan when he realizes that the girls are only trying to help Suzu love studying. The next day, they put their plans into motion, and Ikuto nervously walks Suzu past most of the checkpoints that they have created to divert her to school. However, Suzu starts to notice the weird pattern, but she can't figure out what is happening. Suzu and Ikuto end up falling down a rabbit hole, which leads them straight into the school, where Chikagi is already waiting. However, Suzu manages to escape from the school, forcing the group to chase her down. Ikuto finally catches her with his cunning tricks, and to punish her, he tickles her feet until she has no strength again. Ikuto then gives her a word of advice, telling her that she can get better at studying if she puts her mind to it. This is enough to convince Suzu, who then decides to go to school, leaving the girls joyous because their efforts didn't go to waste. Sometime later, Suzu is on the beach in search of seaweed, when she spots the bottle containing the letter Ikuto had written to his sister. She picked it up and rushed over to Ikuto, who initially thought it was his letter, too. However, he realizes that he is wrong when he opens the letter to find out that it is a reply from Misaki. Ikuto reads the letter to find out that Misaki started looking for him after she got his letter, but it turns out that she has gotten lost at sea. Ikuto hears this and rushes to the beach to try and get to his sister. He doesn't care about the whirlpool, but the whirlpool cares about him as it starts throwing him back to the island, giving him no chance to escape with the boat. Suddenly, he gets the idea to fly, and he constructs a kite to fly over the whirlpool. The plan is working so well until a tornado appears like your ex and throws him back to the island. At the same time, the girls heard Ikuto's scream, and they all came rushing to him. Rin then constructs a slingshot to try and get Ikuto off the island, but even this fails spectacularly. One of Yukino's birds later revealed that Ikuto can't even get off the island by air because there is a deadly current keeping them at bay. Machi then tells Ikuto that she can expel his soul from his body so he can meet with his sister, but in return, he has to marry her. Machi is about to get this done when Ayane ruins it, and just as expected, Machi tells her that she is done for. Later on, Chikagi asks the genie for help, and because Ikuto doesn't believe in magic, he kept ruining it, till he had no wishes left. Suzu later reveals her deepest heart's desire about not wanting Ikuto to leave. After saying this, she runs off, and Ikuto chases after her. Ikuto runs into Granny, and he explains to her. Granny then finds Suzu at the beach, telling her that there is one way for Ikuto to leave the island, but once he leaves, he might not be able to return again. Heartbroken, Suzu returns home to tell Ikuto that there is one way to leave the island, and she is ready to tell him even though she might not see him again. Granny joins them, revealing that there is a storm coming, and Ikuto can use the storm to leave the island just the same way he came. However, Granny says this process is life-threatening, and she would only allow Ikuto to go after he has prey to the Sea Dragon Lord. Meanwhile, the girls are preparing to stop whatever plan Ikuto has to leave the island. The next morning, Granny informs Ikuto that to open the Sea Dragon Lord's shrine, he has to obtain a key, and this key is on Mount Fuji. Ikuto and Suzu start heading to the mountain, but Chikagi, Rin, and Yukino follow behind to make sure that they stop Ikuto from getting to the mountain. They manage to lure Suzu into a complicated maze that Chikagi designed and Rin constructed. However, Rin had inserted directional guides inside the maze, ultimately defeating the purpose of a maze. Suzu and Ikuto manage to reach the exit, but to stop them, Chikagi releases a large boulder to chase them down. Just as they are about to be crushed, the Lord of the North appears and saves them by punching away the boulder. However, his help soon turns into a problem when he reveals that he has no intentions of letting them pass. Apparently, the true purpose of the 4 territory lords is to make sure that no one gets access to the Sea Dragon Lord. Fortunately, Maymay and Tono show up to distract the Lord of the North. The two beat him up, giving Ikuto and Suzu the chance to leave. After this, they run into the Lord of the East, who has already been bribed by Chikagi to make sure that they don't go through. The Lord of the East comes after Ikuto, swinging his claws at him, ready to tear his head open. Just as Ikuto is about to lose his life, Shinobu appears to take on the panda. With Shinobu's assistance, they are able to get past the panda, but they run into Suzu's master not long after. Suzu steps in to take on her master, but he confuses them by unleashing clones of himself. He tells them that the only way they are going to pass is to catch the real one. Thanks to his ingenuity, Ikuto is able to figure out the real cat out of the many by using a tiny detail from its tail. However, Suzu's master tells them not to celebrate yet because the last opponent, the Lord of the West, is the strongest of them all. Not long after this, they arrive at the shrine, seated above the mountain. Ikuto grabs the key, but suddenly, it disappears from his hand. It turns out that the chatty chicken, who is their neighbor Karage, is the Lord of the West. Ikuto's brain almost freezes when he realizes that Karage is the strongest, and he has no intention of handing over the key. The fight between the two begins, and Karage gets the upper hand, but Ikuto loses it when he hears the word impossible coming from Karage. Their fight continues, and just as Karage is about to finish him off, Suzu jumps in to take the hit. Suzu's sacrifice turns out to be a catalyst for Ikuto to get really serious. Ikuto manages to defeat Karage, and he claims the key from him. Soon afterward, Ikuto and Suzu arrive on the Sea Dragon Island, and they find the temple, but unknown to them, Ayane is following them. The two open the gate to the shrine, and they climb down the stairs to reach the water below. While they are busy praying, Ayane has died down to get the wish for herself, but she ends up pulling on the dragon's whiskers, ultimately making the dragon mad. The entire structure starts to shake, forcing the trio to run out. The entrance of the shrine gets blocked off, and Ayane is caught to be the perpetrator after they see the dragon's whisker with her. Even without the protection of the Sea Dragon Lord, Ikuto pushes his boat to sea, ready to leave and save the sister. Granny shows up to ask Suzu if she really wants Ikuto to leave, and this brings out her true feelings. She rides the dolphin to catch up to Ikuto to tell him that she doesn't want him to leave, ultimately confessing her love to him. Just as they are about to connect, the whirlpool swallows up his boat and sends Suzu back to the island. She wakes up to Granny telling her that the Sea Dragon Lord is angry. However, Suzu doesn't care, and she tells the dolphin to take her to the Sea Dragon Lord. The dolphin takes her close until she is able to dive into the water to reach the abode of the Sea Dragon Lord. She prays to the Sea Dragon to protect Ikuto, but just as she is about to drown, Rin shows up to save her. After rescuing Suzu, Ayane dives back into the water to reattach the dragon's whisker, which calms his anger. Ayane returns to the surface, and everyone prays for Ikuto's safety. Meanwhile, Ikuto is about to drown, but Machi's magic wakes him up. Ikuto swims to the surface to find himself in front of a boat full of men. His sister's voice echoes from the boat, and she reveals that after her ship was wrecked, she washed up on the island, which is inhabited by only men. She admits that she has been having fun on the island, which shares the same name, Airantu. Misaki wants Ikuto to stay, but Ikuto says he has to return to his lover. The men then provide him with a boat, and Ikuto starts rowing for the island to make sure he gets back to his lover no matter what. He ends up getting swallowed up by the whirlpool, and the next morning, she washes up on the shore. Suzu finds him and hugs him immediately with tears running down her face. While the two are sharing their romantic moment, Granny declares another hide-and-seek tournament to claim the groom. Just like the beginning, Ikuto finds himself running like a cheetah, while the sausage-starved girls try to make him their husband. Thank you for watching till the end, and I hope you find your own Ikuto or Suzu. If you like more videos like this, don't forget to stay tuned on the channel.